What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several tips to hopefully help you win more close range fights in Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 2, because close range fights often are going to be the fights that decide the outcome of the game. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, comment down below which shotgun is your favorite this season, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolvedJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So I'm going to be going over a lot of general advice in this video that kind of translates from season to season and are just general rules of advice that'll help you play better in these close range fights. But the first thing we're going to talk about is going to be the 7 power gloves. These are a new item in Chapter 7 Season 2, and these are incredibly powerful. Not only are these a very good movement item, they're also a very kind of impactful melee item, and the way they change fights this season makes a lot of close range fights play out very unique this season, because you have 2 attacks with this. You have a regular kind of punch and you have an uppercut attack, and that uppercut attack is going to be spammed a lot in close range fights. And I'm not the biggest fan of using melee weapons in Fortnite. I would prefer if they just never existed, but the way this plays out in a lot of situations, the player, if you don't uppercut them, they're going to uppercut you. And so it's kind of like you have to do it to prevent it from happening to you in a lot of situations. And in a lot of fights, this is going to be how you engage a fight. If you have an enemy like playing a bush, or maybe you get shots on them and you're going to push them, using the gloves and hitting a regular ground pound attack into an uppercut is a combo that is very difficult to deal with and can just outright win you a fight in a lot of close range fights. Your opponent will take a lot of damage. It'll be pretty disorienting to them, and as their character kind of gets flung around and like you and them are thrown into the air, it can be rough to play against. And as I said, a lot of enemies are going to be going for this in fights, and it becomes a situation where whichever player initiates this first is going to have the advantage in a fight. And so even though, like I said, I don't like playing off melee weapons, and I would prefer never to, this is a season where I think you really need to get comfortable using these gloves and using the uppercut ability, not only because it gives you an advantage in fights, but it makes it harder for the enemy to do it to you, and that's going to help you win a lot of fights in the long run. The kind of most busted combo, like I said, is when you're pushing somebody to hit one of those regular ground pound attacks. This will be your right trigger on controller or whatever your shoot button is on mouse and keyboard. And then immediately after doing that, you hit an uppercut. That's your aim down sights button. And the combo of that plus switching to a shotgun and immediately shooting them is so much damage that you're just going to outright win most fights, especially if you had the enemy weak beforehand. This is also really helpful for when an enemy is trying to push you. If somebody is trying to do this to you and you happen to uppercut them first, again, you kind of counter theirs and turn the fight in your favor. Anytime anyone's playing a bush this season, which is usually kind of some of the more awkward fights, I want to go for the uppercut or the ground pound and uppercut in those situations as well. So using the gloves isn't very difficult, but knowing when to use them is somewhat of the skill gap there. And using it as a way to initiate fights is something that when you do well, you're probably going to have a much easier time winning games this season. The next bit of advice is going to be more general. So the first thing that I recommend when it comes to getting better at close range fights is to find a sensitivity that you feel comfortable hip firing with, because especially this season with the amount of mobility, a lot of fights are going to be pretty chaotic. The enemies are going to be jumping around, they're going to be gloving around, they're going to be overdrive nading around. Things are going to be going very fast and be pretty chaotic. And if you need to aim in to any shots in these situations, you're typically going to be much slower to react, but also it's going to be much more likely that the enemy movement throws you off. And we talked about these glove situations. You can aim in air in Chapter 7, but you want to just quickly uppercut somebody and then swap to your shotgun and immediately shoot them. And if you don't feel comfortable hip firing, I think this is something that's going to cost you a lot this season. And so I think it is very important to find a regular base X and Y sensitivity that you feel like you can consistently hit shots with and consistently track enemies while hip firing. And this will be something that benefits you from now until the end of time in Fortnite. This has always been how it is. This season, we do have the Thunderburst SMG in the loot pool, and this has basically perfectly accurate hipfire. And this is going to be another thing that really benefits you having a good hipfire sensitivity, because those fights I talked about with the gloves and how important that is, a lot of those situations where you're flinging the enemy into the air or they're flinging you into the air, being able to just like track and melt them with the Thunderburst SMG will make a lot of fights much easier for you. Shotguns are, you know, always the kind of staple close range weapon in Fortnite, and this season is no different. This season we have the Chaos Reloader shotgun, the Iron Pump, and the Twin Hammer shotguns. Last season, the Twin Hammer shotguns were like kind of the most dominant shotgun, but I don't think that is necessarily the case this season. Part of that is because the Chaos Reloader shotgun and the Iron Pump shotgun are just really good. The damage potential on these is incredible. And you might argue, well, last season, the Twin Hammers dominated the Iron Pump. Why is this one different? A lot of people are using better spray weapons this season because last season, a lot of people were using like Pump Deadeye or Twin Hammer Shotguns Deadeye. This season, a lot of people are using the Combat AR, the Thunderburst SMG, the regular pistol, or the Hyper Burst Exotic Pistol. And all of those weapons make better spray weapons to complement these less spammy shotguns. So I think the Twin Hammer shotguns are kind of taking a step back because the other two options are really good and because the spray weapons are really good this season and because of the gloves. I talked earlier about how good the gloves are and how kind of fight defining they are going to be in a lot of close range fights. The Twin Hammer shotguns wants to get up in somebody's face and just kind of spam shots, right? And that is going to be prime glove uppercut situation. And then it's going to be a fight where the Twin Hammers aren't as good and the person using their, you know, burst SMG pistol or one of those other hard-hitting shotguns, I think is going to have an advantage. So the loot pool changes this season, I think, make the Twin Hammer shotguns less appealing. You could still get kills with them. You could still win games with them. But I think the gloves negate them a lot. So I think it's between the Chaos Reloader shotgun and the Iron Pump. There was a nerf to the Chaos Reloader shotgun last week, and it's somewhat noticeable, but I think it's still a really good weapon. And so between these two shotguns, I just kind of take whichever one I'm feeling, you know, that day or that moment, or the one that I have the higher rarity of. If I get the Mythic Iron Pump from Riptides, I'm probably going to use that. If I get a Gold Chaos Reloader off spawn, I'm probably going to use that. So both options are good. I think it depends just on rarity or what you enjoy using. Both of them employ a very similar weapon swapping playstyle. The Chaos Reloader shotgun only has one shot and then it needs to reload. But because it reloads on its own, even when not equipped, you can shoot it, swap to your spray weapon for a period of time, and then swap back to it to hopefully finish the kill. And that's in a more standard fight. A lot of fights aren't playing out that way this season because of the gloves. But either way, that the Chaos Reloader shotgun and the Iron Pump both employ that playstyle. And I think what I see from a lot of players that don't really understand this kind of staple of close range fighting being weapon swapping is they talk about the Iron Pump's fire rate being too low, or they talk about the Chaos Reloader shotguns only having one shell. And because the pump animation will happen on its own whether the weapon is equipped or not, and because the Chaos Reloader will reload on its own whether or not the weapon is equipped, you can shoot the shotgun, swap to your spray weapon, fill the time between shotgun shots with damage from your spray weapon, and then swap back to the shotgun. If you're just staying on the Iron Pump waiting for it to be able to shoot again, or staying on the Chaos Reloader shotgun waiting for it to reload, then sure, the Twin Hammers would be significantly better, but that is not how most people play, and that is not the ideal playstyle. So getting comfortable with this weapon swapping and with this like timing to maximize your damage output is something that, again, will help you from now until the end of time in Fortnite, because a lot of Fortnite seasons play out with a pump meta like this. Using cover is also going to be something that's going to benefit you in pretty much every fight, and close range fights are no different. With Fortnite, if you're peeking from the right side of cover, you expose less of your character than if you're peeking from the left. So when you're playing a tree, a house, a doorway, whatever, you want to set up a fight in such a way where you can slide out from the right, barely show any of your character, hit your shot, and then kind of go back into cover, leaving the opponent a very small target to hit at and very little time to hit their shot on you. And this is going to be very important this season because the Chaos Reloader shotgun has such high base damage. Anytime you're exposed to the enemy, you can easily take a ridiculous amount of damage from that shotgun from a very easy shot, because the Chaos Reloader shotgun doesn't have a very high headshot multiplier. It doesn't have a lot of damage you gain from headshots. It just has an incredibly good base body damage. So a lot of times with the Chaos Reloader shotgun, you're better off just going for body shots and maximizing how many pellets you hit, getting that good guaranteed damage, and then swapping to your spray. So you need to be very mindful of how much you're exposed and how much cover you're using this season because of how deadly the Chaos Reloader shotgun is. This is something that you always want to be doing, and it will always benefit you, but the lethality of the Chaos Reloader shotgun just makes playing recklessly or playing kind of loose, playing lazily around cover, very punishable this season. And the same is going to be true with movement. The way I've kind of talked about this on a lot of videos is what would be easiest for you? If your opponent just kind of stood there and let you fight them, or if they were jumping around, sliding around, sprinting around, trying to get behind you, using movement to your advantage is something that can give you the upper hand in a lot of fights. And I don't just mean movement items. I mean literally moving your character. You want to be as annoying to deal with and as erratic of a target for your enemy to hit. And a lot of times in Fortnite, if you're in a very close range fight and you're able to like jump and slide or just slide behind your enemy and break their camera, that's something that will give you a huge advantage. And if you've ever been in that situation where the enemy is like kind of so close to you that they're behind you, you know what I'm talking about and how awkward those situations are. Again, this is a situation that a season that punishes laziness or punishes kind of carelessness a lot because of how deadly the Chaos Reloader shotgun is. Anything you can do to throw off your opponent's aim, whether that's using cover well, using movement well, positioning yourself in such a way where the fight is really difficult for them, you want to be doing that as much as possible. And another thing that's going to help you win these close range fights is to not be in a 50-50 close range fight. Oftentimes in Fortnite, close range fights are the ones that determine the outcome of the game, like I talked about earlier on in the video, because those are usually going to be fights where you don't have as much of a say in the matter. If you're fighting somebody that's 150 meters away and you're kind of trading shots with the DMR, you know, you could probably kill them that way. But it's kind of up to them. If you hit them once and then they just stop peeking you, you're not going to win that fight that way, right? Like the fight can easily be disengaged by either party. But a close range fight is usually happening, and some players might use mobility to escape or reposition. It's a lot harder than in long range fights or medium range fights. And so the easiest way to, or something you want to be taking advantage of or doing as much as possible, is starting your close range fight with opening damage on the enemy. If you see a guy that's like 40 meters away and you're able to hit like 100 damage on him or so with your burst SMG, pistol, combat AR, whatever you're using, you're able to open that fight with tags and then push onto them with something like overdrive grenades or the 7 gloves. That is going to be a situation where you automatically have an upper hand in the fight because you have to do less damage to the enemy to end the fight. And so the fight is going to take less time. The enemy is going to have less time to react. And you also have a pressure advantage going into the fight because when a lot of players take damage, they start panicking. They start, you know, worrying about getting somewhere to heal. You have such an advantage by opening your fight with early damage that you want to be doing this as much as possible. And forcing close range fights without early damage, unless you have some sort of timing situation, like, you know, they just got done fighting and you're third partying them and it sounded like a fight where they took a lot of damage, or you're really going to catch them off guard or something, that's okay. But most of the time, if you're just hopping on somebody with no early tags, this is a very bad habit and something that's going to make a lot of your close range fights coin flippy. And as I talked about this in the video several times, and the kind of point I've been trying to make is close range fights are very punishing this season. You can quickly get deleted by the gloves, and you can quickly take a lot of chunk damage from the Chaos Reloader shotgun. And so even a fight that seems to be going your way can easily go the other way if you play recklessly. So getting those opening tags and starting these close range fights with an automatic HP and pressure advantage is something that can really help you out. As I said, the gloves are a great initiation. And so if you get good damage on somebody, you're able to overdrive nade onto them, ground pound them with the gloves, uppercut them, and then hipfire them with the Chaos Reloader shotgun. They should pretty much always be dead in that situation. And that's kind of the ideal outcome that you want in a lot of close range fights this season. And as I said earlier, I don't like melee weapons being something that really dominate the game, but you either glove or get gloved this season, it seems. And so you want to be the one doing it rather than having it done to you. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.